get yourself out of a bind if you're stranded, if you get a flat tire or chain goes off. So first I'll talk a little bit about comfort. And the bike that I brought here is not the best bike suitable for a race or triathlon. However, it's a good bike if you just want to kind of test the waters or just really get into the sport without getting really aggressive really quick. This is our most popular bike, which is a hybrid, meaning you can ride it on-road and off-road. And basically, a race bike is going to have a little bit skinnier tires. It's going to have a much more aggressive position on the front. You'll usually see the drop-over handlebars. It's going to be a little bit lighter weight than this. You won't have any suspension. And it's going to be just designed for more aggressive distance speed riding. I brought this one. This happens to be my size. This is an extra small. So first I'll talk about bike fit. And the main reason that most people don't ride a bike is not because budget or they don't have time, but it's simply comfort. And a lot of things can be addressed very easily and inexpensively, and people just don't realize that there are solutions for a lot of the issues. It just comes with comfort that they have. Bike frames come in anywhere from 4 to 7 sizes, and it grows not only height but lengthwise. So it's kind of like when you buy shoes, you buy the correct size shoe. When you buy a bike, you get properly fit for a bike. This is an extra small, so this would be appropriate for me. I'm about 5'1", pretty short. Adjusting the seat makes a critical difference in the comfort, especially in your knees. But when you're sitting on the seats, you want it high enough to where you're just able to reach your tiptoes, which feels a little unstable if you're not used to it. But that way, when you get your leg on that downstroke, you have a pretty good extension on your leg. Not locked out, but just pretty good. Analogy that I like to use is that cycling is similar to walking, if you think about it. And you would never walk like this, because that would kill your knees after a while. And if you have your seat low enough to where you're doing that with your knees, you'll feel it pretty quickly. So seat height makes a critical difference in whether or not you can ride long distance or not without feeling discomfort. Handlebar position is critical as well, especially on a road bike or tri-bike where you're in that same, aggressive position for a long period of time. We actually do, in most shops, we'll do free custom fittings on road or tri-bikes where we take body angle measurements specific to you, and we adjust the stem, the handlebars, the width, the rise of the stem, and everything critical so that you're geometry correct in that position. And by the way, if y'all have any questions during any of this, just raise your hand or just holler if I don't see you. It can be open discussion. So that's a little bit on fit. As far as comfort in general, there are a lot of things that most people will go ahead and get to begin with. Seat is a big thing. I actually brought some cycling shorts, which you've probably used before. And this seat isn't too bad. It actually has a seat post shock built into the post to absorb the bumps. However, you usually won't see that kind of seat on a tri bike. One reason is this one's a little bit wider here, and when you're racing or doing long distance, you'll tend to be a little more forward on the handlebars. And if the seat's wide here, it can rub on your thighs, cause rubbing and shaping. So you would actually want a little bit narrower seat. To keep the comfort, you've probably seen cycling shorts. I really like these. These are made by Giant, $49, but it has a really nice gel cushion in the bottom of them. Really nice flat seams, so it's not going to dig into you after a long period of time. But you can see all the stitching in these, and these shorts are a little different than a typical pair of shorts because they're stitched in a way in the position, a riding position, where you're kind of bent over. That's how they're actually sewn. So they feel kind of funny when you're just walking around them. But I would highly suggest a good pair of cycling shorts.
Would you just use those for training? I know tri shorts have some padding, but
They
does
do.
that hold water?
I would
or?
use this for training.
Okay.
Tri shorts, you want to stay away from the foam, the cushion, because it'll absorb water better. This is actually a gel, which I really like. It's protected a little better from water. But they do make tri shorts, but this is something that you could actually do either or. They do make some cheaper ones that are foamy that I'd probably stay away from. I did bring a seat that is still appropriate for a road bike. You can see it's a little bit narrower. It's actually a little bit longer as well, so you have a little bit more support there. And this is about as wide as I'd want to recommend on a road bike. This particular seat is the dual density made by Surface, $39. And I like it because it's female specific, meaning it's a little bit wider in the back, and it's got a little bit shorter nose to it to fit females a little better. It also, kind of hard to see with the packaging, but the whole middle here will compress in, similar to the shock on the seat post. So it compresses whenever you hit bumps, taking some of that jarring out of your back. Gloves fall under safety and comfort. Anyone wear gloves? I do all the time. They're good for a couple reasons. Not only do they provide a little bit of cushion to prevent lack of blood circulation, which can cause numbness if you ever have tingling in your fingers. I recommend a pair of gloves that will evenly distribute some of the pressure and take it off certain areas if you're experiencing any of that. Also, it's got a little terry cloth on the side here, so you can wick sweat away from your face when you're riding. And when you fall, the first thing you try to do is catch yourself with your hands. We've all done it. So that will protect your hands from getting all skinned up. Comfort, hydration. A couple things you can do with hydration. Probably have a Camelback, which holds about 2 liters or so of liquid. Most bikes, tri bikes or road bikes, will have a couple different areas or options on the frame to support a water bottle. This particular one, because of the design of the frame, sits up here on the handlebars, but you'll typically see a couple areas designed on the frame. Highly recommend getting some bottle cages so you can stay hydrated. I just got it and I don't know how to turn it off on vibrate. Any questions on comfort? Safety, I'll just show you a quick safety check, a couple things to look for. And I wouldn't recommend actually putting tools on the bike unless you have experience or feel really, really comfortable. But definitely want to make sure that both brakes work efficiently, not rubbing on the tires because that will slow you down, wear down your brake pads, and it could lock up on you, send you over the handlebars. So good working brakes, they should stop about halfway. Pretty securely. Night riding or early morning riding, you need reflectors or lights. It is a Mississippi state law to get at least a front headlight. But as you can see, there are several reflectors kind of hidden on this bike. And on each bike, you'll notice a total of 8 reflectors, and you want to make sure that they're all visibly on your bike and positioned properly. We've got a front white reflector, which should be perpendicular to the ground. A rear red reflector, 2 wheel reflectors, and then pedal reflectors. And I don't know if you're ever riding at night, but I've seen down dark alleys 2 white things doing this, and I can tell a cyclist is going by me, and that's the only way I know it's a cyclist. So if you ride at dusk or dawn, it's very, very critical, especially in Hattiesburg, to get some kind of lighting or reflectors. These tires are 26-inch, about a 65 PSI tire, which is pretty average. You'll usually see that on mountain bikes or hybrids. On road bikes, they go up to about 150, roughly, at least 90 pounds of pressure. And just like your car tires, they'll slowly leak air, so you'll have to continue to air them up. Even if your tubes are good, you'll just have to continue airing them up. On a bike like this, or either a mountain bike, I'd say air it up at least every other week. On a road bike, you want to do it at least once a week, and I do mine every time I ride. But because it's it's such a high PSI, it'll just slowly leak out. So keeping your tires inflated will help you keep good traction on the ground. Also, you're less susceptible to pinch your tooth by getting little bumps if you have proper inflation. The only time I'd recommend riding a little bit lower than the maximum recommended pressure is if you're going off-road, where it's loose gravel or dirt, pine straw, you need a little bit more traction, then you can drop it down a little bit. But that's something that you want to routinely check at least every other week or so.
So if your tires say max, you should fill up to that max?
You should, and it'll generally say like 40 to 65 PSI, with 65 being the max. In the summer, I might drop it down to maybe 60 or 5 below the max, just to give it the heat room to expand the tube a little bit without blowing. In the winter or spring, fall, you can go ahead and do the max. On a road bike, you'll notice that if you go ahead and put it up to the max, you're going to get a lot more for your effort. If it's lower pressure, you'll have to pedal and pedal and pedal to barely be getting anywhere. You'll feel like you're just working your heart out. But keeping the tires really hard and firm will let you get more distance with less effort.
A good rule of thumb on a road bike, depending on what pressure you have, is never more than your body weight. Because some tires will go, if you have tubulars or a different kind of tire, it can go way up there.
Yeah.
But you don't want it higher than your body weight. That was what John Cobb just told us like, the last time we were there. So it's kind of a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, tubulars can get ridiculous.
Yeah.
Really, really high.
And if you're on like chip seal as opposed to like smooth asphalt, if your tire is super hard, it will bump over it. So you're actually in the air and it's not even as efficient. If your tires are too hard, you're losing traction because you're bumping through the air by this much over those little bumps as opposed to continuing to keep contact on the road.
You want the traction that you need. Right.
What about the tubeless, Jenny?
The tubeless,
I know probably not for road as much as mountain, but.
Mainly for mountain, simply because you can go down to a really low PSI
Yeah.
and get the grab. They do make them for road. Tubular is actually a little more popular. Clincher is what you'll typically see. I don't see too many tubeless on road. If anything, it's the sew-ups. But I think more off-road simply because
Pain to repair, nobody repairs them.
extremely expensive.
Expensive.
About $70 to $80
Yeah.
just to fix the flat.
Yeah.
And most shops won't on it. Well,
Yeah, we can't find any.
pretty tedious, yeah.
Well, and clinchers have come so far now, the regular, but you can really get excellent clinchers that have low rolling resistance and stuff, so you don't have to invest that $80 a tire.
Yeah.
Right. Couple rules of the road, which you probably know most of this, but I'll just refresh your memory. You want to obey all traffic laws. A lot of people will tell you that you want to ride on the sidewalk or left side of the road. You actually want to be on the right side of the road with traffic. And there is a law now in Mississippi that you've probably heard of, the 3 feet law, where by law we have to have, or traffic has to give us 3 feet riding on the right-hand side of the road, actually in the street. A lot of people don't know that, so I wouldn't go ahead and assume that everybody knows. But we're trying to get the awareness out there. But technically, you should be in the street as far over to the right side as possible. Don't want to ride on the left, simply because it's more dangerous going oncoming traffic. If you were to hit them, you can't really see what's going on. But right side of the road. Stopping on stop signs and stoplights. A lot of it's really common sense. People just don't know about the 3 foot deal yet. And a general rule of thumb, always ride like you're invisible, like no one can see you. That way it's a little safer. Do a helmet fit demonstration here real quick. Do most of you wear a helmet?
Yes.
I used to not, to be honest, and my dad owns a bike shop, so that didn't work out very too well for me. I brought one of our, not the inexpensive helmets, but one a little bit nicer, $59.99, and I was hoping I could have a volunteer to demonstrate.
Denise volunteers, that's right. And she doesn't have a ponytail, so.
And you're about my height, so I don't have to like.
Yeah.
And this is a good recreational or race helmet. It's got a sun visor that you can pop off or leave on, depending on if you want to deal with sunglasses or not. 22 vents, inhalation. This is one of my favorites because it's extremely lightweight. It's not really expensive. It's a good budget helmet, but it's extremely, extremely comfortable. On the back here, most helmets now will have a little dial where you can form it to your head versus just the chin strap that tends to choke you if that's all you have in the helmet. And really quickly, a couple rules on the helmet. There's the 2-finger rule where you want the helmet to start 2 fingers over your eyebrow right here. I've seen some people wear it with the helmet kind of cocked up where their forehead's exposed, and that's almost defeating the purpose. And then 2 fingers under the chin strap, so you just want a little bit of slack there. So if you don't mind, stick that on there. And that's about 2 fingers there, and I'm gonna give it, snug that up. And most helmets are pretty adjustable to fit most head shapes and sizes, and they do make a couple different specific. Good. So that's a proper fit right here. Shake your head like that. Okay, snug it up a little bit. But that's how it should look. You never want it cocked back like that. So tighten it back a little bit if you actually want to bike. Yeah. And just a little bit of room under the chin strap for comfort. Cool. You're welcome. You do want to replace your helmet, no matter what brand it is, every 3 to 5 years, because that's the lifespan of any helmet. Or if you have a crash, even if you don't see any cracks in it, it's only designed to withstand 1 hit, so you have to replace it after that. It won't do its job. I forgot my can of lube. I was going to demonstrate how to properly lube a chain, so I'll do my best without it. There are a couple different kinds of chain lube. The better kind I'd recommend is a silicone or dry wax-based lube. You have to apply it a little more often than the wet-based lube. However, it's less prone to pick up dust and grit that can latch onto your chain and then grind it down. Also, keeping a clean chain, well lubricated, will make you a little bit faster because you have less friction within each chain link. But I usually lean my bike up on the left side right there. And it doesn't matter what gear you're in, but you can pedal backwards. And the chain lube I use is an aerosol spray, but if you have a little drip nozzle, you can put it just actually on the chain, on the back sprockets here, as you rotate backwards, and just put a little drip or spray it until you get 1 full rotation. Whatever type you're using, the instructions will vary as far as how to apply it or how often to apply it. If it's a wax, dry-based lube, you want to do it a little more often. I'd say every 2 weeks or so. The spray-on wet lube, you can get by doing once a month, but you'll have to keep your chain a little bit cleaner. So what are a couple things that would prevent you from finishing a race? Flat tire. That's the biggest thing. That's such a hassle, and it's really frustrating. So I'd like to show you how to change a tire, and I'm going to demonstrate with the back since it's a little more difficult. You've got a little bit more to work with the drivetrain in the back. Normally in the shop we do this with a nice stand and workbench. I'm going to do this on the floor since you're not going to have a stand and workbench in a real life scenario. I'll show you how to easily do it here. I always shift down to the highest number on the right hand side. What that does is put the chain in the most furthest away from the hub sprocket, so that when we flip it over and take the wheel off, you're not really having to pull all that out of the way. That's one thing out of the equation. Just flip it over. what style brakes you have. Road bike brakes or tri brakes will have a little lever down near the brake caliper, and you can pull that lever up, and you'll see the brakes actually expand. That's helpful so that you can easily get the wheel on and off the bike. This one, a little different. There, I'll show you guys. I don't know if y'all can see, but that one just pulls apart like that. And the reason you want to disconnect that, again, it's just, it makes it easier for the wheel, the tire to come on and off, and especially if you air it up off the bike, which to me is easier, then it's easier getting it back on the bike. Demonstrate. So I've disconnected the brakes, and typically road tri bikes will have a quick release here. I'll show you if you can see. And all I did was pull this lever open. I'll loosen that nut on the opposite side just a few turns. And that should do it. I'll try to get where everyone can see. Basically, this is your derailleur. I'm going to pull it just out of the way so that I can pull the wheel up. Just like that. That's not too difficult. It's going to be the same concept on a road or tri bike, except for the brakes. A little bit of air out, as if I just had a flat and I'm really frustrated. So a couple things you want to carry with you in case this happens, and there are different variations of ways to do this, but you want a set of tire levers which clip onto each other, and what this does is allows you to pull the tire off of the rim. These are pretty inexpensive, about $6-7 for a whole set. You'll need some type of inflation, which a pump is a little easier way, I guess, than CO2. Or not easier. You can use CO2 cartridges or a hand pump. This is more reliable because you never have to buy the replacement cartridges, but it does make you put a little more effort into it. So I'm just going to demonstrate this. On a road bike, I wouldn't recommend this as your primary pump because you would wear yourself out very quickly. Exactly. It's just more of an emergency pump, and this will actually mount to your bike underneath the water bottle cage. And then, of course, a spare tube or a patch kit. And it's good to carry patches and a spare tube because if you have a blowout, you can't patch that. But it's I recommend a new tube if possible, just because the patch is usually more temporary. Once I let all the air out, and sometimes you get a flat and it feels low, if you kind of pitch it down, you can let all the air out, which will give you more slack and make it easier to pull the tire off. And I like to start opposite the valve stem, simply because that's where you have the most slack in the tire. And you've got the hook ends, which I was just letting out the air out with, and then the spoon end. So starting opposite the valve stem, just ride the side of it and swing it around. And I'll show you a worst case scenario with some of the road bike tires that are not quite this easy. You have to use 2 or even all 3. You'd actually do one section, clip it around the spoke to hold it. 2 spokes over either way. I'm just going this way because the reflector would be in my way. Out there. And the third one, at that point, you can typically turn it around and it comes off. Hybrids and mountain bike tires usually give you a little more slack, so you can just use 1, but sometimes you can use 2 or 3. So I've got one side off. I'm still going to keep the valve stem down, a little bit easier to work with where there's more slack, and I'm simply going to pull the whole thing off. And it's important to keep the tire and tube in the same orientation as the rim so that we can locate what caused the flat. it up in the same orientation of the tire, and then you can drag it back on the tire or the rim side or whatever it was that caused the flat. I always just run my fingers through it like this just to be sure there's nothing else in there. A lot of times a thorn or something will puncture the tire and then break off, and it'll be hard to see from the outside, so it's good just to double check. So I found the thorn, pulled it out, and so this is my new tube. With the new tube, you just want to put a little bit of shape, a little bit of air in it to give it shape. Stick it back in the tire. And most tire treads will have an orientation. You can see how this one's kind of shaped as an arrow facing you right now. And if you don't remember how it came off, you can always refer to the front tire. Sometimes I even have to literally hold it up like that. Once you get the tube in there, we'll start with the valve stem. Go ahead and mount it down the hole. And you never want to use any tools as you put the tire back on the rim, only when you're pulling it off. So I'm just going to kind of work the tire side facing me on the rim. It's typically pretty easy. So I've got one side on, and before I start the next side, again, I'm going to start by the valve stem here, so that when I end up, I'll end up over here where there's more slack. It won't be all tight. That's it. And then we'll continue to air it up.
On your road tires, when they're gonna be a lot harder to get that last piece of bead over, I always keep, you know those jar openers that you can get in the stores? They look like the door liners, they're for gripping. I keep one of those in my saddlebag because when your hands are sweaty on that last piece of bead, you can put it against your tire and it'll help you roll that bead over when your hands are sweaty. Sometimes your gloves will be okay, but sometimes you just can't get a good grip on it if they're really tight. And that little gripper will really help you push it over. So you just, those little round ones, and just fold one up and keep it in your little saddlebag for emergencies. It'll help you when you change a flat.
That's a good idea. And if it's ever difficult getting that second side of the tire off, or on the rim, you can always let a little bit of pressure out of the tube, and that'll soften it up a little bit. And I didn't bring a pressed valve tube with me to show you how it operates, which is basically the same. It's just the really skinny European valve. Works the same. It just this works on both. Some pumps will have two different holes, one large one, one small one, and the small one would be for that pressed valve. The one I just used was a smart bed, so it would work for either or.
You recommend bringing a CO2 cartridge for races?
Yes. I carry both on my bike, but I would do the CO2 simply because it's at least half the time. It's so much quicker. I would definitely recommend just a small, lightweight emergency pump for backup in case you use all your CO2s. CO2s are a lot quicker. All right, and with a quick release, I didn't explain too clear what I was doing. With a quick release, when I put it back on the bike, what I'm going to do is tighten this nut just tight enough to where that lever locks out about halfway with the strength of about 2 fingers. And I'll demonstrate that now before I get away and put it on the bike. But you don't want it, you actually want it tight enough to where when you close it, it leaves a little bit of imprint of the lettering on your palm. Try to get out the race house. Open the chain just like I took it off. Pull back up on your rail. like to close it with the lever parallel to the frame here, so it's not just sticking out where debris can catch on it. Close it down.
Does it matter where you place the chain?
It does not.
On the tire?
In fact, it really doesn't matter because the first time you pedal it, it's going to center wherever the trailer has it placed at. And before you go, you always want to reconnect the brakes. It's a big no. Which it is a little bit easier on a road or tri bike because it's just simply that one quick release lever that you bring up or down. Any questions on her?
Ginger,
She makes it look really easy, doesn't she?
I've had to do it many times.
Yeah.
how many times have you experienced it, Ginger, in your experience?
I've only had one flat in a race, on wood, but I've had lots of flats on the road. It's something that, and when you are riding, one of the things that is gonna help you is your tire's gonna be warm. It's easier to get that bead off if you're like trying to ever change your tires at home with cold tires. The rubber's way less flexible, so on the road it's a lot simpler. But it's something that you have to practice. It's almost worth learning how to do by taking air out, because when you're on the trace and you get a flat and you're frustrated and then you try to air it up and you pinch it and then you have another flat and then pretty soon you're stranded and trying to call someone saying, well, I'm halfway between Clyde and Jackson, but I'm not really sure. So it is something that it's really valuable for you to learn how to do. But yeah, I had a flat one time in a race, and I don't carry a kit because I figure if I flat, I'm out. And so I started carrying like Hutchinson Fast Air.
Yeah.
So I carried that in a race, which is basically like fix-a-flat for your car, because it'll seal a teeny puncture as well as, inflate it. And I need to get some because I passed a friend and threw it to him in a race and he left it up the road. But it's a little inflation thing, and you twist it onto your valve stem and inflate it, and it'll seal the puncture. I would never recommend it just for riding. If you're training, you always want to change your tire, but in a race situation, if you're really trying to go fast, and it'll fill your tire up in 30 seconds compared to 2 to 5, 10, depending on how familiar you are with to changing the flat in a race situation.
And when you're working out and you're breaking a sweat, the last thing you want to do is sit there and have to pump up a flat when you're already frustrated.
Yeah.
I didn't bring a CO2. I should have to demonstrate how it works, but it's extremely easy. You just have to remember to always have fresh cartridges with you.
Do you use the same process for disc brakes on that?
It's a little easier with disc brakes. It's a good question. You don't have to do anything at all with the brakes. The rotor will simply slide right out of the caliper. So all you have to do is deal with the drivetrain. So again, just a quick summary. Always shift to the highest number, and then you can pick it up and give it a little quick spin to help it go down there. Flip the bike over, disconnect the brakes if it's not disc brake, and then pull the wheel off and proceed from there. I did bring a kit here that we sell a ton of. It's really everything you need except the tube, because tubes come in a million different sizes. But this kit is $39.99. It's got the tire levers I just used with the patch kit underneath, a pump that is good for mountain or road bikes with the press to orchestrator valve, little multi-tool for adjusting your handlebars, seat as far as getting the seat angle up and down or fore and aft, brake adjustments, derailleur adjustments, tighten your crank. It's a pretty handy tool. And then your seat bag, just mount right underneath here. And that's good to carry any extra tools, nutrition, power bar, cell phone, keys, wallet, ID, and such. These actually come in several different sizes. You can custom pick out any of this, a little bit less expensive if you buy it as a package. And one thing I'll go back to, which I didn't mention earlier, the angle of the seat has a lot to do with comfort, especially on a tri or road bike where you're leaning over a little bit more. In fact, this seat's pretty level, which is really appropriate on this particular bike where the handlebars are sitting up and you're really relaxed on the bike. If I were position. I might even lower my seat in the front just a hair. That way it can kind of accommodate the position that I'm in. And I'll throw this tip in real quick. Even though I didn't bring a road bike, I can demonstrate good geometry, I guess, as far as when you're riding. I've seen people have really poor riding form where they're doing this number, the back actually hunched, arms locked out, and they feel discomfort in their neck, upper body, their wrists go numb, start tingling, and that's breaking a lot of rules there as far as being good for your body. When you're on a road bike, you want your head to be in line with your back. You want to rotate your pelvis forward, keeping your back straight, roll your eyes forward, and you want your arms to be just slightly bent. If you lock it out, you'll cut off blood circulation and you'll feel a little bit of tingling or numbness in your hands pretty quickly.
Do you offer a service to have your bike fit for you?
Yes.
Even if you didn't purchase the bike?
Well, if it's a Giant, we do, and the reason is every manufacturer has a different geometry as far as each frame, each tube on the frame. We're knowledgeable in Giant's geometry, but not other brands. I know the other store, Hattiesburg Bicycle Center, will do like a Trek or a Lamont fit because their geometry is a little bit different. We can help set the seat post and just a handlebar rise and lean on those bikes, but to get a critical fit, we're more familiar with Giant. More maintenance on bikes. When you store the bike, you want to try to store it in a climate controlled area. You don't want to spend a lot of money for a bike and then have it rust on you and corrode, have the cables freeze up on you. Especially in Mississippi, we have a lot of moisture in the air. You can actually store it. The best way to do it, if you're going to store it for the winter or a few months, they make those hooks that you can drill straight to a stud or in the roof and then hang your bike wheel from the hook. That's best because when your tires get low, they can kind of get pinched on the bottom here and have little cracks and cuts. So keep them elevated if you want to make sure of that. If you do have a mountain bike or have hydraulic disc brakes, you want to make sure at least once a month you go and just pump them a few times to prevent the fluid from getting dirty. But you don't have to worry about that on standard bikes. I would recommend getting just a free estimate done on your bike at least once a year, or if you have an accident, get it checked out. Or if you ride every other day, maybe even bring it in every 6 months or so. For the average rider who rides 2-3 times a week, I'd say bring it in at least once a year just to have it checked over. Most shops do free estimates where we'll check the bearings, the brakes, derailleurs, tires, tubes, brake pads, and let you know if there's anything that needs to be done. I think that's about all I have. I wanted to leave a little bit of time at the end of class for questions. Does anyone have any questions related to this or anything that I haven't addressed?
What about if your chain pops off? I mean,
That's a good question.
To get that thing back on?
Absolutely.
Other than a stick? Maybe no names. Use what you've got, okay?
That's really frustrating because you have to get your hands a little dirty. The worst thing you can do if your chain pops off is keep trying to pedal the bike because wherever it's lodged, it's going to get sucked down in where you have to have a tool to extract the crank to get it off. Your chain comes off, which sometimes it'll happen even if you're doing everything right. Stop immediately. Typically, it's going to fall off on the front, and what I see the most of is when it falls off towards the frame off that little sprocket. The reason for that is when you're pedaling really hard or under pressure, or for example, going up a big hill and you shift down like 2 to 1 or 3 to 2. If you're under a lot of pressure, the chain can actually move over just a little bit more and fall off the sprocket. That's all you got to do. So I've had people call me and say, my chain fell off, what do I do? Put it back on. So again, the worst thing you to do is keep pedaling it, thinking that's gonna fix it, because it will get lodged down, between the frame and the spindle down here, and then you have to actually, take the crank off to pull it off. That's something else that can ruin your ride if you don't know how simple it is to fix it.
Speaking of another thing that's really simple, I had already raced 5 triathlons whenever I figured this out. Your brakes, your front brakes sometimes will touch.
Yep.
And so before a race, I always check to make sure that there is not rubbing. Something happened during the race. One was, I could hear it as I was riding, and it was mighty mag, and so I was about to go down a hill, and I got really brave. I was like, okay, I'm gonna lean forward, and I'm gonna try and
Open the brake.
my finger got caught in the tire, so I almost so I was like, I'm just gonna just ride this thing out with it like that, because I'm not gonna lose a finger over this.
Well, guy calling up a bike going
Down the hill, exactly. So I get back, and Chris Collins was actually racing this one too, and I was like, you won't believe what happened. And he said, look at this, there's a little lever on the side that it's like an emergency release for the brakes. All I had to do was just go, bing.
Yep.
So I might have, yeah, lesson learned.
Disastrous.
Yeah.
Could have been worse. One thing on that topic, if your brakes are ever scraping really bad, chances are, and it's the same on this bike as it would be on a road bike, the chances are your wheel might be a little off-centered. You can test the brake. Like if you ever take the wheel on and off for transportation or fixing a flat, this is something that you always want to double check before you start riding. Right now you can see that the left-hand side is moving a little bit more than the right, which you can hear it scraping a little bit. And again, that will make it more difficult for you to get the speed that you're trying to get. It'll wear down the brake pads, and it could cause it to lock up on you. The easiest fix for that, especially if you're during a race and just need a quick fix, just open the quick release lever, and I'll stand right in front of it and use this right hole in the floor, which most forks will have some kind of indication of where the center is, and follow it down to the center tire tread. I can see how it's off a little bit right now. So I'll simply open that, pull it over just a little bit. Looks pretty good. Twist that. Sometimes it takes a few turns. Did it too much. And sometimes you really are in need of a brake adjustment, but this is more of a quick fix just to get you through the ride. A little better. Any other questions? Not everyone.
Do you guys clean your bikes after, when they get really dirty? Like polishes and cleaners
Yeah.
and stuff? Even the frame and the drivetrain?
We actually use kind of like a mineral spirits when we clean drivetrains, which is basically a degreaser, and they make a little device that you can clamp on your chain without having to break your chain or take it off. Pour the mineral spirits or whatever solution you want to use, and flip the bike upside down, just like you're looping the chain, and just run it backwards.
There's little brushes in there that'll scrub the chain,
Get
get the
all that
solution, and
feel
all the dirt will
off.
just fall off in the little clear container.
And they make little kits. You don't want to go that extreme with it, like you were saying, just with actual just a little brush. Should have brought something to show you. But they make one with like almost a long toothbrush with a little hook on the other end. And the hook is designed to get between your sprockets back here, keep all that clean. And then when you're cleaning a chain, once you get all the gunk off by using a degreaser, you're going to take a dry cloth, clean anything, any residue off, and then re-lubricate it. You don't want to leave it dry. That would cause it to start corroding pretty quickly. How often do you clean? For off-road, I would say every ride. For on-road, about once a month or so. You can actually run your finger across the chain and feel it. If it's really gritty, I would clean it immediately. just run your finger across, and if it's gritty, go ahead and clean it.
I know that, especially after, if I ride in the rain, I clean it every time after I ride in the rain.
And
Just because
re-oil
I don't want it to, yeah, ruin.
And wipe off your frame too, and you can buy special like frame polish, or you can even just use a little bit of furniture polish if you want to just put it on top of your
Yep.
frame when you're done, just to protect the frame as well.
And get little places, little nooks and crannies where the bearings go. And they're pretty sealed, but you don't want a lot of gunk collecting on these areas here, for extensions, which you won't have on a road or tri-specific bike. Down where the pedals go, down in the derailleur pulleys, just around here. Actually, take a cloth underneath here and just kind of get both sides up and around and get any gunk and build up on those two pulleys. Because if you clean your chain really well, spend a lot of time on it, and you don't clean everything that runs through, then you're defeating the purpose. Biggest mistake, taking your bike through a car wash, or pressure washing the bike. That will dry out the bearings in a heartbeat. It will look clean, but it's doing the bike a disservice.
Take it, people do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. In fact, we got, there was a flood in Tennessee, maybe 6 months or so, longer than that, and Hudson's got a huge fleet of really nice high-end ROs, nice bikes, and we started seeing them in the store for just minor repair. And we noticed the bearings just felt, or sounded really dry, and the cables were just really gritty feeling. We opened up the bearings, completely bone dry to the point where the ball bearings had actually caused pits in the cups that they sit in. So dry bearings can ruin a bike pretty quickly. Any other questions?
Do you carry any tri-bikes, or can you tell have you already told them the difference in road and?
I have not.
Okay.
We stock road bikes, which most of our customers do tries on a road bike after the proper fit. They actually add the air bars to make it a little more aerodynamic. The difference between a road and a tri is just the geometry. On a tri bike, you'll see your seat's a little more forward over the pedals, mainly to help sprint and accelerate a little bit quicker. And you'll see the handlebars are more like a bullhorn, where you're almost constantly in this really aggressive position, just for speed and cutting through the wind a little faster. A road bike is more for distance, but it's a little more comfortable in my opinion, because you can actually, you have a couple more positions to ride that are more upright versus just being really aggressive. Like your bike, the Divide, is one of my favorite bikes because you get all three options. You get the lower position of the drops before going fast, the hoods, which is the best of both worlds, right there by your controls, or you can sit on the top if you want to kind of stretch your back out for a second. The air bars are a really good idea if you have a road bike, because that offers just another extension to really